that movie is just filled with them. There's that one. There's the Billy Bat scene. There's the one in his mother's house. There's the one where he gets whacked. The one where you think Maury's going to get killed. There's the one with, the stuff with Spider. It's just filled with there's no filler. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no trash.
Whoa, girl. Take it down a notch. We get it. Goodfellas might be Marty's best ever. But does that mean you should watch it a dozen times a year? I don't think so. Grace, Dave, and Wally may not agree.
You were the spark plug again, Grace, for Goodfellas. So what is it about Goodfellas?
Yeah, why did you bring it? Yeah, why did you pick this?
I started Louise several years ago on a little diet of my favorite directors. And it was actually kind of hard to find Scorsese ones at the time that were appropriate for him. But,
yeah, no kidding.
He totally glommed on to Goodfellas. He has watched it probably like 10 times.
Oh, man.
In the past few years. Yeah, and so I frequently will watch it with him. That's one of those movies where if you see it, you're drawn in by it. You can't ignore it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you've literally watched it 8 times in the past year?
It's possible. I mean, at least 3 or 4 all the way through, and probably 4 or 5 where I was kind of half listening, but Luis was watching the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
A few months ago, I read a book by Joe Pistone, the guy who was Donnie Brasco, like in real life, the real Joe Pistone. The library recommended some other books to me, and I found this other book, and I thought it was, again, about the real people around Goodfellas, but it was about the making of Goodfellas. And it was super interesting. And it did go into the real people behind the characters, but it was super interesting. It went into the financing and the, shot by shot practically, and the music and, the dialogue. And, because it was the guy who wrote the book, Wise Guy, who did the screenplay. Yeah. So it was super interesting. But just reading about it just makes me remember everything that I like about it. And oddly enough, I know Scorsese is known hugely for his soundtracks, but that one in particular, I really loved that one, especially the Harry Nilsson song, which got me on a whole Harry Nilsson kick.
Yeah.
Over the past few years. So there's just a million things about it that I loved, I guess. But Dave, you said you maybe didn't like it as much as other Scorsese movies.
Yeah. Rewatching it, I liked it much, much more because I was actually paying attention to what he was doing, and I was sort of standing back from the kind of as it moves along, it gets to be claustrophobic, and the violence is so over the top and so jolting, even if you've already seen it. It's like those scenes you just want to look away. I mean, it just opens with that crazy scene where they hear the thumping in the trunk, and Pesci has this huge butcher knife just behind his belt, because I guess they're just going to cut him up. They're going to cut him into pieces or something. That's the only reason he took the knife with him, I guess. And he just starts sinking the knife into this body,
that's hard to watch.
Horrible. Yeah, it's just so difficult to watch, and. It's having seen, like I said earlier when we were talking about this, and having seen Silence and thinking, well, maybe there's a context for all of this. Maybe he just has this moral vision, and this isn't just sensational. I mean, he's just not doing these things for the sensational impact of it, and so it's not gratuitous. And watching it in that context, I liked it a lot more, and I was just impressed. I mean, I was very impressed. The zoom, the editing and the zooming in and that sort of thing didn't seem as frenetic or as manipulative as it is in Cape Fear. And it just felt like it was really well done. It was just a beautifully made movie. So, yeah, I liked it a lot more this time. There was a lot to like about it. Yeah.
Right at the beginning of the book, what's the name of that? Do you remember, Grace?
Oh, I think it was Made Men.
Yeah, right. He the first thing he mentions is that scene, that opening scene, and where you see Pesci reach into his coat, and you expect it to be a gun, and it's this huge knife.
Yeah,
that's like a moment that defines the whole thing from that point on.
And it is almost funny. I mean, it's just it's too shocking to laugh. but the incongruity of it. I mean, it's like, what is he, a buccaneer? I mean, what is this, a sword? I mean, good grief, what is he doing? Where did that come from?
That's a knife he got from his mother's house, right?
I know, yeah. Nancy noticed that when we were watching it. Yeah, I didn't even spot that. I didn't even spot him grabbing it.
And you don't know that
until
later, so that's funnier. Then you think, oh, that's where that knife came from.
You're right. And then when you see the scene, and they're talking, and she's showing them this painting she's done, and it's so normal. I mean, just the normality of it, and she's such a good person, you know. And she showed her the painting, and they've got the dogs, and this guy with gray hair, and Pesci's laughing. Hey, you know, that's like, and he doesn't say it, but it's like the guy in the trunk of the car. They've got the body of the guy they think is dead is out in the car, right?
It's total black humor.
It is. Oh, it's all full of black humor. Yeah, and some of it's just funny. I mean, it's not just black; it's just funny and normal. That's what's so interesting is that he sets it up so that it starts off, and you think, well, this kid, you know, this Henry is just a little entrepreneur. He's just a mover and shaker. You know, he gets in and he gets in with the mob because he's so impressed. He's just impressed with what they're doing. They're out there doing things. You know, they're getting something done, and look at the money they're making. You know, how can he resist? And so he's just drawn into this evil, you know. But at the beginning, it doesn't look that way. It doesn't seem like that.
Yeah,
that's what struck me most. Not having seen it or except in maybe bits and pieces for 20 years, was how funny it is. It's the lines and everything. It's funny, but at the same time, real and violent.
There's so many individual scenes. You know, a lot of movies, there'll be like one scene where you think, well, that just made the whole movie. But that movie is just filled with them. And the one thing that Luis always, I swear to God, he knows by heart that scene where they go into, was it the Bamboo Lounge or wherever, and they're going by all the wise guys, and he's saying who it is, like, here's Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy, you know. Luis knows every single one of those, and I'll send him texts, like, you know, if I want to check how he's doing with his classes, I'll be like, how you doing, guy? Because that's one of the, and then he'll say to me, I'm going to go get the papers, and he
yeah, Jimmy two times. Because he says everything twice. I'm going to get the paper. I'm going to get the paper.
Get the papers. Yeah, and but that movie is just filled with them. There's that one. There's the Billy Bat scene. There's the one at his mother's house. There's the one where he gets whacked. There's the one where you think Maury's going to get killed. There's the one with the stuff with Spider. Like, it's just filled with there's no filler. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no trash.
And then when Pesci is like, that scene when Pesci's saying, "What do you mean funny?"
Yeah, that's the classic one.
Right.
I'm a clown. Yeah, that's just classic. It's like everybody uses that line, you know, for years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just come up in conversation and everything. And then you go back and you realize you just watch it, and it really is hilarious. I mean, it's really funny, and everybody's watching him in the club because it's so funny. He's just like crazy. But he's funny.
Well, and it's also because they think that he's going to, like, pull out a gun and frickin' shoot someone.
Well, but they're all kind of smiling.
Also, there's that, too, right? Because they don't know.
They don't know. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But in a way, that's the whole movie, right? It's on that edge between total violence and disgust at what these people are. And on the other side, kind of like, oh, they're funny. You know, they're goofy. Yeah.
And they're just normal. Yeah. It's just normal life. That's what makes it so good, is he shows how everyone is so normal. It's like Nazi Germany, you know, the good Christians who were killing Jews, you know, in the camps. And at home, they're just ordinary, good church-going guys, you know, and just doing their jobs.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, you know, these guys. He's always got the crucifix around his neck. Henry does. The whole movie, you know.
Yeah.
The scene where Karen and her mother are arguing, she turns to her father and tries to get him out, and the mother says something like, "Leave your father out of it. He hasn't been able to digest a meal in 6 weeks." Perfect.
Oh yeah, there's just so many things like that, and little details, and I'm sure most of this came out of the book. I mean, did you say you read the book or no, Grace?
No, but the book that I just read really went into detail. I mean, not only did it go into detail in almost every scene, but it did connect it back to the real people too. So there was, a lot in there, not as obviously detailed as Wise Guy would be. So,
but Pileggi must have put like tons of detail. I mean, this was, you know, he must have been a good writer. That book must be a decent book because there's just so much. Like, the thing that really stood out to me was like when I can't remember his name. Well, Pauly, whoever.
Yeah, Paul Sorvino,
right? Yeah, he's slicing those translucent little, paper thin slices of garlic, and then so it'll just liquefy. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to do that from now on.
No.
It's like I just got my cooking just improved by watching Goodfellas, and it's just stuff like that. It's like all these little details that you can't think that stuff up. This is this is from their lives.
I think also, again, just reading about Scorsese in other places, he really did. His family wasn't involved with, the mafia or anything like that, but they were all over his neighborhood. And so,
right, that's right.
Yeah, especially like with Mean Streets. Yes.
Yeah, Mean Streets, right, exactly.
Yeah.
It came out of that, yeah.
And Pileggi, too. He said the reason he was able to do the book is because Hill gave him his phone number after he was in witness protection.
Oh, yeah, he always wanted, I guess he just always wanted the attention, supposedly.
They said if the FBI had known, they would have freaked out, but...
Well, yeah, apparently he was just so bored. It was clear that as soon as he got to Arizona or wherever they had him, he was just like, it was like, that was prison. That to him was prison, just ordinary suburban life.
What's interesting, though, is I guess his kids, Henry Hill's kids, wrote a book, and they talk about, what a real asshole he was. And that's something that doesn't really come out as much. Like, you look at him as sort of the, not innocent, but quote unquote innocent in the context of all these crazy ass people, right? He never like killed someone outright. And, but apparently, he was like a drug user. Well, he's a drug user, but he used to like beat his wife and things like that. And, so
absolutely,
it's kind of interesting sometimes what gets left out, but I guess it's in the purpose of the story, because Henry Hill just really seems like an audience surrogate, right? He's supposed to stand for us the way he's looking at things. But one thing I think is really interesting about Scorsese, to me, it's so weird because stylistically, he is really, he's really innovative and he does a lot of things, but it's so weird for me, like in the story, when I'm in the movie, I don't notice that stuff at all. Like if you look at Raging Bull, it's black and white. There's a lot of slow-mo. There's, a whole bunch of other stuff in there stylistically. And when I saw it, I just didn't even notice that. To me, it's almost like documentary-like. But then, later on you notice look at all this stuff that he's doing. That's not a documentary.
Yeah. No, I notice it. I still notice it, but I thought it was fine. I thought it worked, but every time he zooms, it's like I'm noticing it, and I realize he's manipulating me.
Yeah.
It does come out, and the music too. You're talking about the soundtrack. This one it worked fine, but it sounded to me like a whole list of songs that he just loved, and he just wanted to work them into a movie. There were times like "Gimme Shelter" was perfect for that moment when the drugs are the subject, But aside from that, it felt like, I don't know.
That's the other thing that hit me was the music right from the start. It's perfect, but after a while, the number of songs they used, every single scene is introduced by another appropriate song.
Right.
And it works, but at the same time, I was beginning to get like too much music.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that because in this book that I was just reading, he went through the whole scene where Henry is, totally coked out and the helicopter's flying around. And it's really weird because I always just think about that Harry Nilsson song in that scene. However, they went through the music in that scene and there's like 5 or 6 different songs.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, right. I'm sure he's trying to do something with that too, probably to just, well, whatever. I'm not going to go that far with it. But sometimes it does seem a little obvious, the music,
Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed. Yeah. Here we go. Here's another scene, and here's an appropriate tune.
Yeah.
When Layla comes on, it really does work. It has that expansive feel, but it's still Layla. I have all these associations with Layla that have nothing to do with, these people whose lives are spinning out of control. So
it is interesting.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that these songs are almost too big for the movie,
Yeah, that's a good thought, because there are movies where at the end of the movie, I'm like, I got to go get this. I got to find out who was on that soundtrack, because there's a lot of stuff that's so obscure. I'm like, I don't even know this. And I discover new things. So it doesn't take me out of the movie as much.
On the other hand, the Sid Vicious at the very end, with singing My Way, it's like, that's the best choice of music of any movie he ever made. It just totally sums it up. It just undercuts everything that went before it. Because it's just those stupid lyrics that Sinatra, made famous, but sung in such a way that it's just like excoriating, it's just horrible. It's almost like, you did it your way, you poor sap, it's just, and this is after he said, we had it made. There was a bowl of cocaine by the bed, and there was a bag of jewelry in the closet. And I'm thinking like, oh God, What a nightmare! What a nightmare of a life,
There's so much music that halfway through I started to think, why hasn't there been a Goodfellas the musical?
Yeah, that's funny. That's like Springtime for Hitler.
God.
I looked it up, and somebody on YouTube did it.
Oh no!
I mean, they didn't do the whole thing, but there's a couple of songs that, like, hey, get your fucking shine box, boy.
Oh God!
Stuff like that. How much of your interest, Grace, is based on your ancestry?
Okay, there's a lot of stuff connected here. When I was reading that Joe Pistone book, he started talking about, in New York, Buffalo / Niagara, huge mob thing. After New York, Buffalo, Niagara is huge. And he started mentioning some names, because there was supposedly going to be a mob war in the 80s, and the guys from downstate, in New York, they were like, no, there's not going to be a war. But anyway, one of the families, the three of us, worked with someone who was married into that family. And I was friends with this person. And I remember maybe we were all in Buffalo for something. And so for some reason, my mom met this person. And she said to me later, so what's his father's name? And I said, I can find out. And when I found out, she's like, he's in the mob. I'm like, are you kidding me? And the name was in this Joe Pistone book later on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then in The Irishman, so my mom knew all these mob people, right? Before she met my dad, she went out with a guy for 5 years. And later on, he was in the mob. And when I was watching The Irishman, he said they're going on that little road trip together, Frank Sheeran and Buffalino and their wives. And Frank Sheeran says, oh, yeah, Russ's wife was real mob royalty. Her family was the Sciandras from Pittston, Pennsylvania, right? So my mother, they pronounced it Sciandra, was from Pittston. Her family was from Pittston. This was her frickin' family.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I'm like, I mean, I don't.
Are you saying you're made, Grace?
I don't know. I feel like maybe I am.
Did you guys call sauce gravy?
No, we did not. I don't know what Italian does, except maybe in Boston.
That's what my wife said. She said, we never called it gravy. She's half Sicilian.
Yeah, that's Boston. That's as far as I'm concerned. But so that was really weird to hear that. And then 2 summers ago, my professional association, they had this event, and it was to take the West Side Mob tour in Buffalo, right? So I'm on the tour, and I said to the tour leader, I said, my mom used to go out with a guy in the mob, and the tour leader picks up she's got an org chart of the mob. And she said, oh, maybe he's on this chart. And I'm like, no, I don't think he was any big deal or anything. So we're going house to house. They're talking about it. And she comes up to this other house on the west side. And she pulls out her org chart. And on the second row, she goes, and this is the house of Thomas Chooch Micheli. And I went, oh! So my mother's cousin was married to this guy. And I had been in that house a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
And this guy was the second level. There was the big boss, and he was the second level.
Wow. And
I remembered that house. I mean, I hadn't been there since probably I was like 6 or 7, but I remembered it very clearly. He had a disabled son, so I just remembered meeting him, because I don't think I had ever met anyone before who had been disabled in that way. And it just, stuck in my brain. baby brain or whatever. So I'm telling you, all those things, I mean, those are not little coincidences, right? And then my mother's father owned a pool hall. That was like the social clubs, right? That I'm like,
right.
My mom's family had to have been. It just seems like they had to have been in it.
Now, when this comes up in a regular Italian family, it sounds like there's as much awe attached to someone being in the mob as it would be for anyone outside.
How are you characterizing the word awe, AWE? What do you mean by awe? Because for us, it's like disgust. It's like horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you hear this guy is in the mob and that it's kind of exciting and titillating and it's a big deal. And yet I would think that it would be like, oh yeah, of course.
No, I mean, I don't consider it titillating. I consider it like horrifying, you know, when it's that I'm not excited about it. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then when I think like, could my grandfather actually have run a pool hall where like mob guys, I'm like, holy shit. No, I don't find it titillating at all. I find it horrifying.
Oh, I would be proud of that.
You would. You would not.
No, but, from a historical context. So it's like kind of cool to be connected to that.
So Grace, you're saying that if we were in line at Pinkberry and somebody cut in front of you and I pistol whipped him, that wouldn't like turn you on?
Yeah, because my dad used to pistol whip everyone.
Yeah, you've seen that so many times.
I'm numb to it at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but it just seems a little odd to me that you're surprised by it or that...
Well, now, wait a minute, Wally. That sounds very anti-Italian. Is it very anti-Italian, what you just said?
No, it's
like
not
all
at all.
Italians have mob roots?
No, you remember my conversation with Clarence Thomas?
Yes.
I'm coming at this from the same angle. There's no discrimination. There's no...
Okay.
I don't mean that at all. I mean in a purely logical context.
That most Italian families would have had some connection?
Yeah, because it's such a cultural
thing. I don't know. I mean, I know for Sicilians, because the mob is really, I mean, it's Sicily, right? That's like the...
Right.
And Naples is a big thing. How it plays out in northern Italy, I have no idea,
Right. That's what I think, too. Yeah, I think it's northern Italians, probably not, but, people from the farther south you go, there's more, 5 degrees of separation, 3 degrees,
maybe
2 degrees, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. What's weird is that, my mother has told me these various stories, and I feel like my mother has never put all this together. Like, I don't know if I said to her, Mom, was Grandpa was he in the mob? Because she told me he got kicked out of Pittston. What does that mean? He got kicked out. Why did he get kicked out?
Kicked out.
What's the deal with that?
That's a red flag. But didn't all groups have a mob? I mean, there was a Jewish mob, and there were...
I tell Louise all the time, there's the Irish Russian, mob. Japanese, there's Yakuza, everyone
Russians
does.
Now, Russian, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt.
At some point, they've all been... But the Italian mob is kind of like the classic because of The Godfather and all these cultural references.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, was the mob before movies? Do you know, in terms of like being known and everything?
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was known.
It was.
Yeah, Al Capone.
Well, but Al Capone, so he wasn't a gangster. He was a mobster. That's the idea. It was the mafia.
Right.
Because I never think of him in terms of the mafia.
But John Gotti's famous.
Yeah, but that's the 80s. I'm talking about, way back.
Yeah, there was it the Black Hand?
Yes. But
there was the Black Hand. That goes way back.
But in public consciousness, were people aware of that? I don't know. Wally, you were the one who was born then. I wasn't.
Yeah.
What came through the movie, though, was something interesting where he said, the mob is just the mob itself is just the police force for all of these little groups, for just individual criminals, I guess, and just individual businesses.
Right.
And it's just like in The Godfather, where somebody comes and says, I've got this problem. Will you solve it for me?
Well, it's the police force for them if the police force in general went to the people they protected and demanded money from them every month. Yeah, sure, then I guess you could call it the police force.
Yeah, it's just that the Italian angle has been hyped so much. I mean, every group, the Chinese had mobs.
Yeah, the triads.
Right.
And Peaky Blinders,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody did, but the Italians got painted with that brush, and it's still there today. And I think we forget did you see any of the new Fargo?
No, I've heard about it, though.
Yeah, it has, at the core of it is the Italian mob against the black mob.
Yeah, Chris Rock is in it, right?
Right.
I've been meaning to watch it.
It's like 1950. And I think what we forget is how much discrimination there was against Italians, even up to 1950
Right.
Let me tell you something. In the 1970s, my best friend was Greek. And whenever I would go to her house, her mother was not very nice to me. And finally, I said something to her, and she's like, well, my mother doesn't like Italians.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of crap still went on. Ugh, it's ridiculous. I saw something in the newspaper today or on TV or something about the... oh, God, I can't remember what group it is, but doing a series of classes about anti-Semitism and helping teens deal with it. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me that we still have to deal with this shit?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. But yeah, Italians were totally vilified. I mean, they were considered lower than animals.
Right.
Which is why you get involved in crime, because there aren't the opportunities.
Yeah.
There aren't as many opportunities to make money. So in other words, you just start this other little social system where you can actually make a living, and you have your police force.
Well, it's interesting when you think about Goodfellas versus The Godfather. I mean, when I see The Godfather now, I don't know why it took me so long to really look at it this way, but it's just like a big romantic drama,
Right.
And it's so full of crap, like these people had honor and stuff. That is just baloney.
It's an opera.
I mean, there's no honor there.
You seem to be really prejudiced against killing and torture. And
I know. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, right. That's the way I've always felt about mob movies, is that it's a nightmare. I mean, there's no romance whatsoever. And this whole thing about The Godfather, I've never understood that, because it still looks like it's just a nightmare, because it ends in death and betrayal. That's the only way that life ends, is you're either arrested or you die or you're betrayed or you betray somebody else.
Yeah.
Did you notice that he calls himself the Irishman, that De Niro in the movie?
No, I think maybe I didn't.
Yeah, he says, I'm the only Irishman here. And then
yeah.
And they refer to him as the Irishman. And I just thought that must be why he used that as a title for the movie, the later movie.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe.
It was the same kind of deal, right? He was half Irish, or
actually, and De Niro, he is only like 25% Italian.
Huh, really?
Yeah. Who knew that? Yeah, I got his father was like half Italian and half Irish. I can't remember what his mother was, but he's only like 20. You think of him as like the quintessential Italian,
Right.
Right.
I was surprised by how little he's in it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's interesting.
There's right at the beginning, but then there's 45 minutes almost where you don't see him at all.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't come in until the scene where Henry meets him, like when he's 19, 20?
Right.
And he's handing out the $50 bills to people or whatever. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting, but he's such a, what's the word in that movie? He's so monumental in that movie, though.
Yeah, he is. He's the source of stability in a lot of respects.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I thought that Ray Liotta, he was excellent, and you would think from there he would have had this huge career like De Niro, and he never went anywhere,
I agree.
did he? I mean,
he did.
Oh, he did.
He did stuff, but not the amazing.
No,
he didn't.
No, it is interesting,
right?
That he
became kind of a parody. He sort of became a parody of himself in a way.
He's been doing more stuff lately. The past 10 years, he's been getting back to it, I think, more heavily. But no, you're right. I mean, I used to sit there and think, whatever happened to him? It's kind of odd because he was super good in that.
Yeah, the transformation, the last 40 minutes where it's the cocaine, that's everything is fueled by cocaine. Yeah.
That was a brilliant scene, that whole helicopter thing.
Oh, yeah. I know.
The pacing of that.
I remember that so clearly.
The pacing is already fast through the whole movie, but then it gets to there and it gets manic. And he's trying to cook and take care of his mistress and avoid the helicopter.
Yeah.
And deliver the guns and the mismatched silencers, and but don't get the sauce stuck to the bottom of the pan. Right. Don't get that sauce stuck to the bottom. Keep stirring it. Yeah, it's hilarious.
So in the scope of Scorsese movies, where does this fall for you guys?
Very high up there with Taxi Driver. With I know I love Age of Innocence, but I think it's one of his best movies. Taxi Driver.
I guess it's the classic, you can't stop watching it.
Right.
I'd put it right up there as 1 or 2.
Yeah. Gangs of New York is a phenomenal movie. It's just...
Yeah, it is good.
It's so extreme. It's almost like the most extreme vision of like how brutal people are and evil. Yeah.
But oddly enough, which I didn't think was the case, I'm pretty sure that was one of his movies that wasn't fully his, right? I mean...
Yeah, I don't know.
They're ones that a studio brought or a star brought to him, like Color of Money. And a lot of times you can really tell the difference.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think in my mind, Raging Bull is the masterpiece in my mind. And then my favorite is actually not Goodfellas, even though I love it. My favorite is King of Comedy. I love King of Comedy. Yeah. Most people don't like it that much, but I know it's gotten a lot more love since it came out.
We can all relate to it, though.
You mean you're taking hostages in order to get a...
Now that we're doing a podcast and I hear some noise out in the other room.
Rupert, he's like, Ma! I just love his character. And then the Sandra Bernhard and Jerry Lewis scene, that is one of the cringiest scenes ever. But you cannot look away from that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that again.
Oh my God, it's so good. So good. What's interesting for me is Joe Pesci. I mean, I love him in all the, in Casino and everything, but I think he's super good in The Irishman, where he plays like the boss. Do you know what I mean? Where he's not the crazy ass nut job, but I thought he was super good in that.
Yes, he was. That's what I thought too. I thought it was a great role for him.
Yeah. Like that scene in the diner when he's telling Frank that, you're going to have to do it. It is what it is. And I was like, wow, this is chilling. It was just, and because of him.
It was almost the opposite of the role he had here, where there was almost wisdom. I mean, he was almost the source of wisdom in The Irishman. Yeah.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it has 96% critics, 97% audience.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Goodfellas?
That's amazing.
Yep.
Really? Wow, that is huge.
For me, what's missing in Goodfellas is it's funny, it's violent, it's got music, there's no sex.
Scorsese doesn't have sex at all.
Yeah.
Practically. He just totally, and I'm sure you could get into that. But Mean Streets, there's a little bit, but he does not do sex at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it always seems super awkward for him. I don't know why that. Although there is that one scene in Raging Bull, but it is not a huge part of it. It's just like not is, and it's weird because supposedly he's kind of a womanizer, right? Like he's had 4 wives and affairs and
Well, being 4 foot 8 inches tall is a drawback, though.
That's not really how tall he is it?
He's not even 5 feet tall, is he? I don't know. He's really short.
Oh, he's got to be more than 5 feet.
I don't know.
Come on. I'm 5'1". He's got to be taller than I am.
Yeah.
We were watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest the other night, and I forgot that Danny DeVito's in it. And when Danny DeVito stands next to the Native American guy, I'm like, oh my God, he's 2 Danny DeVitos.
Yeah, he's great in that movie. He's so different.
He is. He's very genuine, yeah.
He's like Italian, right? He's got an Italian name in that. I can't remember what he is.
Mancini.
Yeah, Mancini. That's a great name.
I mean, we were watching that, and I said, wow, I miss 1970s movies.
Oh, God, 70s. Yeah, those were the best. That was the golden age.
They were.
That was the golden age.
Yeah, well, some people think that was one of the 2 golden ages of movies.
Yeah, no, it was the real golden age, yeah.
Yeah, I said to Luis, this is how movies should end. Do you know what I mean? This is like, we should all be totally depressed. Not really, but just the realism of it, I don't know. I was telling him you have to see French Connection. You got to see, well, I think of my Gene Hackman movies in the 70s. You've got like The Conversation, Night Moves, French Connection.
In October 2002, Henry Hill published The Wise Guy Cookbook, my favorite recipes from my life as a good fella to cooking on the run. In it, Hill shared stories through his childhood, life in the mob, and running from the law. He also presents recipes he learned from his family during his early years in the mob.
He was still trying to make money.
He claimed the last meal the day he was busted for drugs consisted of rolled veal cutlets, sauce with pork butt, veal shanks, ziti, and green beans with olive oil and garlic.
Sounds awesome.
It was saying in the book that I read that you can't even get some of those cuts of meat anymore. They don't even exist.
Martin Scorsese is 5'4".
5'4", yeah.
5'4". I knew he was taller than I am.
Who isn't?
But he's taller than Prince. I think Prince was 5'2".
Okay, well, that's for another podcast.
Well, actually, Grace, Prince was 5'3". But who's counting? The point is, if you'd like to discuss vertically challenged celebrities or, really, anything at all, tweet us at charbroiledc or email us at charbroiledchats@gmail.com. Of course, we would love it if you'd review Charbroiled Chats on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you download podcasts. And please subscribe, like, follow, comment, and, most of all, tell all your friends about Charbroiled Chats. See you next time.